Hello everyone! In this tutorial I want to show you how to generate 3D levels in Frigga. If this is the first time you hear about Frigga, I recommend watching the Getting Started video first, as it goes over all the important features of Frigga. You can find the link in the description. Let's get started now. I have a bunch of prefabs here from the mini dungeon pack from Kenny, and I'm inside an empty scene in Unity. Let's create a new empty game object, call it generator, and add the Walker generator component to it. We can click the generate button and it generates a level for us, but we can see that it uses the 2D axis configuration, but we will fix that in a moment. Let's create a new theme. I will call it tutorial 3D and open it. Now if I go from top, we need to change the cell sizzle to XZY, which is the most common one for 3D levels. We can keep the cell size set to the unit size, but we should change the default output type to game object, because when generating 3D levels, we will usually use game objects and not tiles. The rest I can keep as is. If I go now back to the scene, open the generator object, I need to assign the newly created theme to the theme field in the generator. Then I scroll down a bit and map the tiles, floor tile to floor tile and wall tile to wall tile. And now I can click the generate button again, and I can see that the level is now correctly positioned and oriented. Let's add some rules now. Go back to the theme file, click on the rules button next to the floors layer. Next, create a new rule group and a new rule inside. And the rule is opened in this rule editor window on the left. Now we want to create a rule for the floor tiles. So I will click the floor in grid tile on the left. Then I find the prefab for the floor and I can drag and drop it here in this area. And now we can see that the theme was automatically refreshed and the level now uses the floor tile that we configured. Now let's move to the walls layer. Again, create a new rule group, a new rule inside, and this time I will add the wall tile, which is this one, and I will set it to be used if there's a wall tile underneath it. And you can see that it was immediately applied again. But let's say I don't want this wall tile to be applied on top of all wall and grid tiles, but only if the wall tile is next to a floor tile. So let's change the pattern a bit so that here is a wall tile and a floor tile is next to it. But you can see that the rule was applied only in one side of the level. That's because we need to manually enable rotations of the tile. So let's find the rule inside the theme editor and click the rotate button next to our rule. Now you can see that the rule was applied with all the rotations enabled. We can see that some of the corners were not filled with anything, so let's put a dirt tile there. Let's create a new rule, and it should be applied on top of the wall tile. Again, it will use the dirt prefab, and it should be applied only if there's a floor tile on the diagonal side of the wall tile. And again, we need to rotate the rule. But now you can see that it replaced the original rule that we used for the walls. That's why we need to put it below the wall tile. And now you can see that the rule is only used for these corner areas of the level. Next, we can set up this wall half tile, which is on one side it's a dirt and on the other side it's a wall. So let's get to it, create a new rule. It should be a wall next to a floor again, and I drag this wall half tile, but I only want to use this rule when it's not on the corners. So I will add 2 more wall tiles to the pattern. But now you can see that as I created the rule, it's not rotated properly. So instead of enabling rotations of the rule itself, I first want to fix this rotation issue. So let's open the transformation section of the rule, and here you can see you can change the rotation. So I can move the Y rotation, and you see that all the instances of the rule will rotate. So I need to set it to 90 degrees, and it's looking good now. So with this in place, I can click the rotate button again, and now it's applied to all the places where it should be. But you can see that if there are 2 different floor tiles next to the wall tile, the half wall is not used, but we use the full wall prefab. Now for 3D levels, I usually like to use a slightly different configuration of the generator. So let's change that a bit. I changed it so that the level is a bit smaller and there are not that many open spaces, as I think it looks better for this specific tile set. But you can always experiment with the configuration of the generator. Next, let's add some decorations to the level. So I will switch to the decorations layer, add a new rule group, and the first rule that I will add is this wood structure object. So let's go back to the scene, and I want to place it on top of a floor if it's between 2 walls. And yes, it should look like this. I will also enable the rotation of the rule, but now you can see that the rule is probably applied on too many places. So I will go to the blue noise setting and make it so that all the instances of this rule must be at least 4 tiles apart from one another. And I can also add multiple game objects to a single rule. So there's another structure like this. It's a bit smaller than the previous one, but let's add some variety and add it to the output. And you can see that now sometimes one output is used and other times the other one. Next, let's add some barrels to the level, and I want the barrel to only appear in a corner like this. And before I enable the rotations, I want to move the barrel a bit closer to the wall. So let's do it with the transform section again, changing the offset of the game object. Yes, we can use it like this. And now I enable the rotations, but again you can see that the rule is applied too often. So let's change the probability of the rule being applied to only like 10% now. Next, I will add this banner on top of a wall. So let's make a rule for it, make it so that it's placed on a wall when there's a floor tile nearby, and use the banner object. Sometimes it might be quite hard to find the correct rotation of the rule, because it might look like the rule is rotated correctly, but that's only because sometimes even the wrong rotation looks correct. But if I let the rule be rotated, you can see that there are places where the banner is inside a wall. So I will try different rotations of the banner, and I want to make sure that it appears correctly. So this is not correct, this one also not, but if I change it like this, and now the banner should be used whenever possible and should be correctly rotated. But again, let's make it only like 5% chance of the rule to be applied, so it's only here and there. Next, I will add some coins to the level for the player to obtain on top of floor tiles. Again, I will enable rotation for the rule. This time it's not really needed, but it can add some variety to the level if the coins are sometimes 90 degrees rotated. Let's change the probability again. So we see now we have like only 2 coins or 3, so make it 10% maybe. And we can also add some enemies to the level. And for enemies, I will use the blue noise so that the level is not too hard and the enemies are spaced around the level. And that's basically it. I can add more rules if I wanted, but this should serve as a basic demonstration of how to set up a 3D level with Frigga. Let's generate some more levels. If you have any questions, the documentation is linked in the description, or you can come to our Discord server.